Well, folks, we finally got a leaked image of the Panasonic S1R Mark II, along with some very exciting video codecs and aspect ratios. Will it get Apple ProRes, ProRes RAW, 32-bit audio, and the same 5-axis LCD found in the Sony A7R5? And what about a dedicated AI processing chip similar to the one found in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II or the Sony A7R5? Well, I'll answer these questions in this video. But first, I have a simple and yet humble request. Please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps this channel grow. And most importantly, it keeps you informed on the latest camera gear. Thanks to Andrea Pizzini, we have a whole bunch more validated leaks for the upcoming Panasonic S1R Mark II, along with this grainy, low-resolution leaked image. Andrea says that one of the many influencers invited by Panasonic to the Lumix S1R Mark II event in Norway has leaked an image of the camera. You can't see much, which is definitely true, but just to be clear, I saw some high-resolution images of the S1R Mark II that I can't share with you, but that's why I know that the image I'm showing you here today is legit. And thank you, Andrea, for chiming in and letting us know that it's validated. It's validated that what we're seeing here is absolutely nothing. I mean, the lack of detail is pretty bad. I think, Andrea, we're more impressed with the specifications that you've been able to capture than the leaked image. But please, please, see if you can't leak out an actual higher resolution image a little bit later, because we're really curious. Maybe just the top, maybe the side, maybe some ports. We'd like to see a little bit more. And I know this seems to be par for the course for any new upcoming camera. We always get that leaked grainy image. And you know that it's not because the camera is producing really bad results. Even a 6-year-old iPhone or Samsung phone can produce really sharp, clear images. Now, they're taking a high-resolution image and I don't know what they're doing to it. They're stripping away all sorts of detail. So we have this really terribly grainy image. So I'm not even going to try to analyze the image to tell you, hey, look, I found this new capability, or this dial is a little bit different. It's so badly grainy that it's really hard to derive much functions. But I know some of you are real whizzes with this, and you're going to be able to go through this, use AI tools, and come up with some, perhaps, what's the word I'm looking for? You're going to discover something. So let us know in the description down below. And while the Panasonic S1R Mark II isn't getting the same 5-axis LCD that first came out with the Sony A7R5, it is getting the 4-axis LCD found in the most recent Sony A9 Mark III. And it works very well for photographers when looking down the barrel of a super telephoto, or for videographers that need that side view. It's going to be weather sealed and have a very similar form factor to the S5 II, although it is going to be a little bit thicker. But there should be no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that it's also going to get that phase detect autofocus system that first came out for Panasonic with the S5 II, along with some very interesting AI enhancements, but more on that later. And I did have one source coming forward telling me that the AI system, the AI autofocus system in the S1R Mark II is going to be better than anything that Panasonic has put out before. But this source didn't tell me anything. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on in the video. But before I get back to the S1R Mark II, there's something that I really love about the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, and it's the front and back tally lights. And we're going to see the same with the S1R Mark II. But there is no mention if we're going to get a nice red rectangle around the frame in the EVF and the LCD. But I'd certainly expect it. And the S1R Mark II is going to get a nice big red record button on the front of the camera. If you're starting to get a sense that the S1R Mark II is more than just a stills hybrid camera update, well, I think you'd be correct. You see, when Panasonic first announced the S1 and the S1R, the S1 was the general hybrid camera balancing stills and video, whereas the S1R was primarily focused on stills. With the S1H Mark II, the S1H Mark II was all about video. But from what I'm seeing here with the specs so far, and I've got a lot more to go through, it's looking like the S1R Mark II is combining the S1 and the S1R, but I'm also getting the feeling that it's taking on some of the mantle of what the S1H was. And just bear with me a minute, because when I cover off all the codecs and the aspect ratios and a few other capabilities that have just released, have just leaked, I think you're going to start to feel the same thing. Now, some people wondered, well, wait a minute, does this mean no S1H Mark II? No, it doesn't. What I think Panasonic could be planning here is a 1-2 punch. Take the S1 and the S1R and merge it into this S1R Mark II, producing a very solid camera that competes on par with the Nikon Z8 and the Canon EOS R5, and deliver a little bit more. And then come out with an S1H successor that not only beats the S1R Mark II, but the Sony FX3 and pretty well everything else in the marketplace, retaking that lead as the video-centric pioneer and becoming the #1 camera, at least in terms of capabilities. Now, in terms of the marketplace, well, that's going to be up to you. But now let's turn our attention to the Codecs aspect ratios and a bunch of information that's just recently leaked, thanks to Andrea Pizzini. The Panasonic S1R Mark II is going to be capable of delivering Apple ProRes RAW HQ. That's in 6K. It's also going to be capable of delivering Apple ProRes 422 HQ and Apple ProRes 422 with proxies. Now, those last two, I don't know what codecs they're going to be in. Now, we've been given more information here, but again, there's a lot missing. When are we going to get 8K over sample 4K, 8K over sample 6K, all that sort of stuff. And the Apple ProRes 422 HQ, is that available in all modes up to 6K? Does it include 8K? It doesn't mention. Now, we've seen this with other cameras, such as Nikon, where they've given us Apple ProRes, but they don't deliver it in 8K. It's just limited to 4K or 6K, and I believe 4K with the Nikons. Now, since Nikon has purchased Red, a lot of the legal reasons for not delivering Apple ProRes in 8K or even 6K, well, those have since disappeared. But we'll just have to wait and see, because while I've got a lot more to give you here, there's still an awful lot missing. We can now record directly to an SSD using USB-C through products like Angelbird's new CF Express Type B card reader that supports Gen 4 cards and provides such a small footprint with an all-metal enclosure designed to be out in the wild for remote run and gun, where we can attach it to the camera simply using the hot shoe adapter. And as you can see here, it's really tiny. Put your CF Express card in here, put the cap on it, and look at that, fits in the palm of my hand. Really, really tiny. But now it's time to turn our attention to all the aspect ratios. There are a lot. So these are the supported aspect ratios. 2.39 to 1, 2.35 to 1, 2 to 1, 1.85 to 1, 16 by 9, 9 by 6, 5 to 4, 4 to 3, 4 to 5, 1 to 1, and if that isn't enough, well, you can set your own custom aspect ratio. And I told you there's a lot of new specifications we got here. I think what is very clear by these aspect ratios, as well as OpenGate, as well as all the different codecs that we've been hearing about, as well as the different resolutions and frame rates and all that combined together, is that the S1R Mark II is no minor update to the S1R. In fact, it's beginning to feel like a beast of a camera, to quote one of my viewers. It's beginning to feel like, well, what many of us were hoping to see in the S1H Mark II. And folks, we're not even done yet. There's an awful lot more to come out, but what's really exciting about this video is it's giving us a bit of a glimpse behind the curtain as to what Panasonic has been thinking about this camera, that it's not just a minor update for photographers or videographers. It's actually a very bold update. And oddly enough, even though, and this is kind of ironic actually, despite this being an update to the S1R, the only S1 focused primarily on photographers, we have way more video leak specifications coming out than we do photo specs, although 40 frames per second is pretty impressive. Raw. All right, well, we're not done, so let's get to the rest of the specifications. What have I left out so far? Oh yes, Like with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, which supports 32-bit floating audio, the S1R also delivers that, and raw recording externally to be supported by Atomos and Blackmagic, or to support Atomos and Blackmagic. Well, that's coming in a future firmware update. Now, we've seen that twice so far in the latest leak specifications, validated leak specifications coming from Andrea Pizzini. He's been telling us that there's going to be a future firmware update to unlock certain capabilities. I think not only is Panasonic trying to say, look, you know what? If you like the Nikon Z8, which is a terrific camera, if you like the Canon EOS R5, the Mark I or the Mark II, which are terrific cameras, great. Well, you're really going to love our S1R Mark II, because from what I'm gathering so far, it doesn't look like it's going to stand toe-to-toe with the R5. It looks like it's going to stand toe-to-toe with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Nikon Z8, and maybe even just go a little bit higher. After all, neither of those two cameras can do open gate, and the level of support for the different aspect ratios, wow. But there's more to come. I expect many more leaks to come out in the days before the announcement on February the 25th at 8 a.m. in the morning this coming Tuesday. And that's why I have the smart pre-order links for much of this video in the description down below or right here on the screen for Adorama and B&H. And the main purpose for this is, well, we've been waiting for, what, 6 years since the announcement of the Panasonic S1, S1R, and the S1H. So you can imagine, despite this coming later than we expected, you can expect there to be quite a lot of pent-up demand and that it's just going to sell out very, very quickly. So what the pre-order links help you do, go ahead, copy them down, put them in your browser, bookmark them, because they're going to save you anywhere from 5 to 35 seconds so you can get your order in before others. So it gets you a little bit higher up in the queue, so hopefully you don't have to wait too long. I know with this, I keep pointing out this one here, but this was incredible. It was announced, I think it was November the 2nd, 2023, or was it 20? Anyhow, it was announced in November, and some people who pre-ordered that day had to wait up to 10 months before they could get it. Since 2020, I don't know what it is with the world, but if you don't pre-order things that you want, you have to wait a long time. Now, there is something I suggest. If you're sitting on the fence and you're not sure, pay attention to the shipping date. Watch all the reviews, do all the reading, watch the YouTube videos, and then if you decide, yeah, you know what, I'm happy with this, great, you're in the queue. No remorse about not pre-ordering earlier. However, if you decide it's not for you, well, then you can go ahead and just cancel and you don't have to pay anything. So just pay attention to that shipping date. But there are a few things I think we're going to see. So one prediction I want to make, as we saw with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Sony A7R5, as well as many other Sony cameras after that, they have their own dedicated AI chip. And what that AI chip is largely used to do is to bring AI predictive analytics, or not so much analytics, is to be able to predict certain pathways. So for example, with AI autofocus, it's able to better acquire a subject or an object, but then to track it better, because what it's doing is it's looking at the motion of that subject or object and doing predictive analytics to predict where it's going to be, so it doesn't lose focus as much. So I think we're definitely going to see some improvements there. Now, in terms of the leaks that I expect to come out this weekend, we're probably going to see some leaks regarding the autofocus system, enhancements there, more details about the codecs, because, for example, what do we get with 8K? Any Apple ProRes? And I know what you're thinking. Well, we didn't with Nikon, right? And there was that bit of there's some legal problems there at the time because Red was its own organization, and they were trying to protect patents that, and we're not going to get into a discussion about whether the patents are valid or not, but with it being acquired by Red, I'm wondering what sort of codecs we could see at the 8K level. What will we see at the 6K level, 4K? Where are we seeing full sensor readout? Are we getting 8K over sample, 6K, 4K? What about slow motion? Are we going to see anything past 120 frames per second? And stills, what about the raw recording of stills? 14-bit raw? You know, there's an awful lot of details we don't know here. 40 frames per second raw. Okay, give us more information. And I think that's what we're going to see shape up over the weekend. I really believe that the S1R Mark II is going to stand right up there with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Nikon Z8. it's looking very bold so far. I think it's going to be impressive. I really expect to have that AI chip. I think that's going to make a huge difference. I think with that happening, we're no longer going to say, well, Panasonic's better than Canon, which is better than Sony. I think there's still going to be a level of that, but I think we're going to see the autofocus capabilities at the level where it's going to produce really good results. And having a Canon, which arguably has the best autofocus system today with their Digic accelerator chip in acquisition and tracking of subjects and objects, I gotta say that it screws up every now and then, especially when it goes to sleep. If I wake it up, it's kind of like a lazy teenager. It doesn't want to get out of bed. It's not going to focus. I have to turn it off and on again, and then everything's golden. Now, is there anything that I've left out? Because there's an awful lot that I had to cover off today. So we talked about that. We talked about that. And that should be it for now. So I know this video is already pretty long. I'm pretty excited by this. So don't forget to join me Tuesday morning. I'm going to start an hour before the announcement at 7 a.m. with my expert panel, where we're going to talk about the latest leaked specifications, who this camera is for, what it's trying to do to the space that Canon started with the R5, then the Nikon Z8 came along. The only camera company, it looks like, that doesn't have a camera in that space right now is Sony, which is surprising because Sony has so many cameras in so many segments. But the R5, Nikon Z8, and Panasonic S1R 2, we don't have a Sony there. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great weekend. And don't be surprised if there's a new video coming out soon, so don't forget to subscribe and follow me on X. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Have yourself a good weekend. We'll see you again soon. Boy, that's gotten a little bit repetitive, hasn't it?